In the world of finance, interest is basically everything, right? It's king. But what if you couldn't use it? What if it was forbidden? Well, today we're diving into the Sukuk. It's this really clever financial tool that's absolutely blown up in popularity precisely because it figured out how to thrive without charging a single cent of interest. So let's just jump right into the central puzzle here. You know how finance works. Interest kind of makes the world go round. But in Islamic finance, charging interest, they call it riba, is a huge no-go. It's strictly off limits. So that creates this massive question, right? How on earth does a company raise money for, say, a new factory? Or how do you invest for your future if interest isn't even on the table? Well, the answer to that big question, it lies in this really unique financial instrument, and that's the sukuk. Now, you'll often hear it called an Islamic bond, but honestly, as we're about to see, that simple label, it really doesn't even scratch the surface of what's going on here. Okay, so here's the official definition from the organization that basically sets the standards for all of Islamic finance. And I want you to look at the keywords here. Certificates of equal value representing undivided shares in ownership. See what's missing? There's no mention of loan or debt. And that's the whole point. This isn't about lending money. It's about owning a piece of something. Here's maybe the simplest way to get your head around it. A regular bond, that's just a loan. You're the lender. But a sukuk, that's a share. You're buying a piece of something real, a building, a project, you name it. You're not a lender, you're a part owner. And this right here is the absolute core idea. It's a total mental shift you have to make to really get what a sukuk is. It's about ownership, not a loan. You're not just handing over cash and waiting to get paid back with interest. No, you're buying a slice of something tangible, and you get to share in the profits it makes. And yeah, the losses too. So to make sure this whole ownership thing is legit and not just a loan in disguise, every single sukuk has to play by 3 golden rules. These are what make it compliant with Sharia, or Islamic law. Okay, rule number 1. It has to be tied to a real, tangible asset. We're talking something you can actually point to. No financial wizardry or smoke and mirrors. Rule 2, your payments, the money you get back, it's not some fixed interest rate. It's a share of the actual after-tax profits that the asset generates. So yeah, your fortunes are directly tied to how well that asset does. And finally, Rule 3, when the sukuk matures, the final repayment isn't your initial investment amount. It's based on whatever the asset's market value is at that time. You're really, truly in it together, for better or worse. All right, so we've got the rules down, but how does this all actually work in the real world? Let's trace the flow of value, the flow of the cash and the assets. You can kind of think of it like a carefully choreographed dance between a few key players. So before we look at the whole picture, let's meet the cast of characters. First up, you've got the originator. That's just the company that needs to raise the funds. Then, of course, you have the investors. That's the people or institutions with the money. And then, playing a super important role right in the middle, you have something called a special purpose vehicle, or SPV for short. Think of it as a separate little company set up just to make this whole deal happen smoothly. Okay, now this diagram might look a little complicated at first glance, but stick with me. Let's just break it down by following the numbers. It all kicks off at the bottom with our investors. In step 1, they put up the money. In return, the SPV, our middleman, gives them sukuk certificates. That's step 2. So now the SPV is holding the cash. What does it do? It uses that cash to buy an asset from the originator, the company that needed the money in the first place. You can see that happening in steps 3, 4, and 5. So now that asset is owned by the SPV and it starts making money. In steps 6 and 7, you can see the profits flowing from that asset back to the SPV, which then passes them along to the investors as their return. And then, at the very end of the deal, the asset gets sold. The money from that sale goes back through the SPV and is returned to the investors in the final steps 9 and 10. See? It's a complete circle, a flow of value that's all anchored by a real asset. And what's really cool is that this partnership model we just looked at, well, that's just one flavor of sukuk. This isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. It's actually incredibly flexible. Yeah, just take a look at this table. It gives you a great snapshot of the different kinds. You've got Ajara sukuk, which are based on a lease, so investors get rental income. There's Musharka, the partnership model we just saw with its profit and loss sharing. You can even structure these things for big construction projects or for trade financing. The key is that each type uses a different approved Islamic contract as its foundation to make sure everything is compliant. Okay, so we've gone through a lot of the details. Let's zoom back out for a second and focus on the single most important takeaway here. This is the one big idea that separates a sukuk from pretty much every other kind of fixed income investment out there. It's this simple. A regular bond is a debt. A sukuk is a share of an asset. With a bond, you're just a lender who collects a fixed interest payment. With a sukuk, you are a part owner, and you get a share of the actual profits. It's the difference between a loan and a stake. And that, right there, is the fundamental difference. And all of this leaves us with a pretty big question to think about, doesn't it? I mean, in a world where more and more investors are looking for ethical investments, investments that are tied to something real, something tangible, what kind of role could this type of asset-based finance play in our future? It's definitely something worth pondering.